Okay, good evening and welcome to section 2.2 on problem solving with rational numbers in decimal form. I'm currently working on page 56 in your textbook on adding and subtracting rational numbers in decimal form. So if we look at the first example, it gives you questions like this. It says I gotta take my marker. It says 2.65 plus negative 3.81 and asks you to calculate that. Well, normally what we do, if it was just an addition of non-integer numbers, we would be like, well, we'll just take the first number and add the second number, and that should be okay. But the problem with this type of question is we're dealing with the addition of integers. We're dealing with positive and negative numbers. So what we really have to do is first estimate what would our answer be. And that will help us figure out how we're going to solve this. Well, if I think about 2.65 as being roughly 3, and negative 3.81 as being negative 4, I can look at this question and I can say, I'm adding positives and negatives. What do I have more of? Well, I have more negatives, which means if I was to model it, there's 3 positives and 4 negatives. What do I have more of? I have more negatives. How many more do I have? I have 1. So my answer for this would be negative 1. So my estimation for this particular question is negative 1. That's our estimation. So looking back at those numbers, how am I going to manipulate 2.65 and negative 3.81 to get an answer of negative 1? Well, the answer is the same way I kind of did it before. I asked the same question. What do I have more of, positive, negatives? I have more negatives. The difference between how many negatives I have and how many positives I have, how many negatives I have and how many positives I have, that's going to tell me my answer. So difference means subtraction. So if I take my larger of the two and subtract the smaller of the two, I will get the correct answer. So what I do here is I line up my decimals. I just use my basic algorithm. 1 take away 5 I can't do, so I borrow. Give it 10 hundredths there. Now makes it 11 hundredths. 11 hundredths take away 5 hundredths is 6 hundredths. 7 tenths take away 6 tenths is 1 tenth. And 3 take away 2 is 1. So my answer is 1.16. But we have to wait a second. That might not be my true answer. If I go back to my estimation, remember we said it was negative 1. So the difference there is 1.16, but my answer is negative 1.16. All right, let's look at a different one. Let's reverse this here and look at the second one. Let's look at the second question, which is negative 5.96. Take away a negative 6.83. So in this particular question, I'm dealing with integers again, and I'm dealing with subtraction. And for those people who have ever had me for math before, they know that the first rule for subtraction is a very simple one. It's never subtract. So when you're dealing with integers, never subtract them. What you're going to do is you're going to apply a simple rule of add the opposite, really. And what that essentially means is you're going to keep the first integer the same, or the first rational number in this case, negative 5.96, and we're going to change from subtraction to addition. And the second integer is going to become its opposite. So negative 6.83, the opposite is positive 6.83. And I can show you in another video why this works, but since we're dealing with the rational numbers, we'll just keep it as you already understand the shortcut rule, and we can take it from here. So this question can now be thought of as this. And again, we have now addition, and we have the addition of a positive and negative. So what do I have more of? I have more positives, and how many more is going to tell me the answer. So if I want to know how many more I have, I take my larger and subtract my smaller. Remember, we're lining our decimals. 3 take away 6 can't be done, so I borrow. I give 10 hundredths to the already 3, so I have 13 hundredths take away 6 hundredths is 7 hundredths. 7 tenths take away 9 tenths, I can't do it, so I take a 1 and give this 10 tenths. So it's now 17 tenths take away 9 tenths is 8, and 5 take away 5 is 0. So my answer is 0.87. And is that positive or negative? Well, I have more positive, so my answer is therefore positive. Okay. That's how you do it. That's how you rationalize how adding and subtracting of rational numbers, no pun intended, is accomplished. So let's try some other ones. Let me just pause this for a second. Okay, we're back. So on page 57, the show you know A, it says negative 4.38 plus 1.52. Now, this is a question, again, where we're adding rational numbers in decimal form, and we have to figure out what is the answer. Well, I have a little over 4 negatives and a little over 1.5 positive. So the question is, what do I have more of, positive or negatives? And the answer is I have more negatives. So my answer will be negative. And how do I figure out how many more I have? Well, I have to actually figure out the difference between the two, and that will tell me how many more negatives I have than positives. 8 take away 2 is 6. 3 tenths take away 5 tenths, I can't do it, so I borrow from 1. I give that 10 tenths, or I give the one that I borrowed over here to make 10 tenths. It's now 13 tenths. Take away 5 tenths is 8 tenths. 3 take away 1 is 2. And I said already that my answer is going to be negative, so my answer is negative 2.86. How many more negatives do I have than positives? I have 2.86 more negatives than I do positives, so that's my answer. Now the next show you know question, B, says negative 1.25 take away 3.55. And this is kind of tricky. Well, it's a little tricky in that you have to understand, well, the operation right over here is subtraction. That's what's going on. And then if this is subtraction, then this number right here is positive. So if I want, I can actually write positive 3.55 in there. It's take away 3.55 or take away positive 3.55. And sometimes for those people who are a little maybe apprehensive as to whether or not it's positive or negative, this always makes sense to do because you'll never get it wrong this way. You'll always make sure you get it right. And again, if we go back to the first of the lesson, I said if you have subtraction, you make sure you apply the add the opposite rule. So we keep the first integer the same. We change it to addition, and we use the opposite of the second integer. Now it's a good thing that we made this positive because it's clear to us that if we use this add the opposite rule, this has to be a negative 3.55. So it looks like that. So subtracting a positive actually becomes adding a negative. And here we have something we haven't discussed before. We're going to add, but we have negatives plus negatives. And if I was to estimate this and I said, well, what's negative 1 plus negative 4? Well, we would know that we have 1 negative plus 4 more negatives. We have 5 negatives in total. So how did we achieve that? Well, we took the 1 plus the 4 and we got our 5 negatives. So for this one, we're not looking for the difference. We're looking for the sum. We're actually going to take these two and add them together. And that will tell us how many total negatives we have. 5 plus 5 is, well, 10, I guess, but 5 hundredths plus 5 hundredths is 1 tenth. 2 tenths, 1 tenth, and 5 tenths is 8 tenths. 3 plus 1 is 4, and my answer is negative 4.80, or simply negative 4.8, because really I don't have any hundredths. Okay? And that's how you add and subtract rational numbers in decimal form.